Meanwhile, President Trump delivering when it comes to the economy, and the American people are noticing. Two new polls out this week have Trump hitting his highest approval rating of his presidency, 46%. But when it comes to the economy, more than half of the public gives him a thumbs up. And it's easy to see why. Wages are up more than 3%, unemployment at a 50-year low. And in Trump country, jobs are now growing at the fastest rate, much faster than urban areas. So how do you run against prosperity? Well, for more, I want to bring in Fox News contributors Deroy Murdock and Leslie Marshall, and from the Washington Examiner, Tom Rogan. Leslie, let me start with you. Everything's firing on all cylinders right now, yet I hear the leading Democrat, Joe Biden, say that the economy isn't working.
Well, because you're looking at money with just money. And if you look at the midterm elections, when Democrats had a tsunami in the House by gaining 40 seats, one of the reasons they did that was health care, which is under the umbrella of the economy, is a very big issue. The data shows in the exit polling data to Americans. And that's not just with Democrats, but with Republicans as well. So the president might have two good polls this week, but the polls go up and down. And Charles, if you want to know how valid those polls are, just ask Hillary Clinton. I believe she's not president. No, she's not. But I will say this, Deroy. If Hillary Clinton had these kind of numbers to run on, blue collar wages up 9 months in a row, more than 3%. Asian unemployment last month went from 3.1 to 2.2%. I mean, are you kidding me? These numbers are mind-boggling.
I hear people say, well, not everybody's benefiting from this economy. And you could have, 0.1% unemployment. People say, what about that 0.1%? These are spectacular figures. The unemployment rate right now at 3.6, it's the lowest in almost 50 years. The last time it was this low, the Beatles were still together and I was in kindergarten. This is spectacular. And in terms of wage growth, that's 3.2% up on a year-on-year basis. We're seeing that those benefits are flowing more towards people in lower incomes than higher incomes. What actually you're seeing, believe it or not, is that under Donald J. Trump, income inequality is shrinking. Whoever thought that would happen under a Republican president?
But Tom, let's face it, it's always people who aren't, I know people who are making more than they've ever made, but they are dissatisfied with the fact that others are making significantly more than they are. And that card has worked politically many times.
Well, it has, but the economic reality in terms of not simply declining unemployment rates, in terms of relative stability in the metrics in terms of inflation, those are matched up with really good growth in terms of both hours working and in terms of hourly wages. But also in the political sphere, this debate is going to be fought and won by either Trump or the Democratic nominee on the basis of who has the better moral narrative. And if President Trump can articulate, as he can now, if you're a minority, look at what you're seeing. If you're middle class, look at what you're seeing. And Democrats are suggesting very expansive social programs that would appear to cost a lot of money. Then there is an ability there to, I think, persuade independent voters, because at the margin, the moral interest would seem to fall into Trump's favor.
In the meantime, Leslie, it's really interesting, though, since Biden has joined, become an official candidate, we are seeing within the Democratic Party where a more conservative thinking seems to be emerging, right? Or maybe it was always there, but it was quiet, pushing back against some of the left-leaning ideas that have dominated headlines for a while. Will the ultimate candidate for the Democratic Party have to be more in the middle, particularly when it comes to fiscal things?
Well, there are a couple of things there, Charles, and that is accurate. First of all, the majority of Democrats, not just politicians that we see in the House and the Senate and in states, gubernatorial and state legislatures, but also the voters are more center. And we have seen historically that Democrats have been more successful in some races. AOC is obviously exempt from that, moving to the center and not to the left. Even though they may be louder and have more followers on social media, the far left Democratic socialist version, if you will, of Democrats, or faction of Democrats, a wing of Democrats, is not the majority of Democrats. So what Joe Biden is speaking to is not just the majority of his base and echoing the sentiment of the majorities of the politicians of Democrats in Washington, but he is also speaking to Republicans who may not be happy with what's happened to their party, people who voted for Trump and may not be happy, and those independents, like Tom just said, rightfully so, who are on the edge and don't have any love for one party or another, but it's an individual. And if I can just say one more thing, all the numbers we talk about, unemployment can be low. It's how people feel. They're not going to look at the stats. They don't live in the world that we do. Most of them aren't investing in the stock market.
But I will
it's
say
how
this,
they
though.
feel.
people know that the difference between I have a job this year and I didn't have a job 2 years ago.
That's right.
They do make that distinction, though. But I will say this, though, and this is something I think Republicans have to understand, or at least think about. Last month, 490,000 people dropped out the labor force. The month before that, 250,000. And that speaks to something odd, right? 7.5 million jobs are open in this country, and we have people leaving the labor force. So there is a niche in this country. There is a pocket in this country that's detached from all of this great economic news.
There is, and I'm not sure why these people are disappearing. We have, I think it's 6 million people looking for work and 7.5 million jobs, more jobs open than there are people looking for them. Hopefully that number will go down and the participation rate will improve. But I think as more and more months like this go on, if we see them, that those people I think will probably come back into the job market. And one thing on healthcare, I think the number is about 2 million people now have private healthcare who didn't before because they're working and their employers are providing them healthcare. So that's one place where the booming Trump economy is making the healthcare situation better.
So Tom, obviously the Republicans lost seats in the House, not as many as did in the first term under Obama, and I think even Clinton. But 2020. The economy being the main topic at hand. The voters for Trump, we just got a report from Brookings Institute. The growth in red states and red counties, job growth has surpassed urban areas, blue states, blue counties by a mile. And it's the first time that's happened in 7 years. It feels like at the very least he has solidified that voting base.
He has, and I think one of the evolving narratives here that will be more in President Trump's favor is the ability to point to or to suggest why some of that growth is happening at a marginal gain rate in terms of the red states. And if we look at areas like Texas and Florida, for example, there could be a good narrative to say, look, it's because of deregulation, lower corporate taxes, more incentives for investment, lower cost of living. I also think one further thing that will help President Trump is if we talk about, for example, the difference between the US economy and the French economy, look at the divergence in terms of youth unemployment rates across the sphere, and look at the comparison between what French governments provides and what Democratic candidates are suggesting in terms of a greater government role in the economy. Trump can make that case, I think.
And Macron, I think, also now is actually trying to push through a tax cut. But Deroy, Leslie, Tom, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.